Hello and greetings. Welcome to this video. This is Corey from the BachScholar YouTube channel. In a video I previously uploaded this morning, I explained how I learned all 12 fugues from Paul Hindemith's Ludus tonalis in 38 days. So never having even seen or touched or heard any of the 12 fugues from Ludus tonalis, I analyzed all 12 and learned them and recorded them on YouTube. They're in a playlist in only 38 days. That's a total of only 3.2 days on average for each of the 12 fugues. For many pianists, learning a fugue, a Hindemith fugue or Bach fugue for that matter, usually takes months. Many pianists will take months on end to learn a fugue. I learned 12 of them in only 38 days. Now, the purpose of this video is not to brag about how fast I can learn things. I am a very fast learner. I'm a fantastic sight reader, for one thing. So my sight reading skills help. But also my analytical skills help me as well, and to help me learn very quickly and efficiently. And I want to explain to you in this video, I want to give you my tricks of the trade on how to learn fugues. This is what I call the essential steps to learning fugues. And this doesn't necessarily apply to just Hindemith fugues. It applies to Bach fugues, Beethoven fugues, Brahms fugues, whoever the composer may be. All fugues are essentially the same in their architectural construction. So what I've done here in this video, in a couple minutes, is I've taken one of the lesser difficult, I think it's probably the least difficult of all the 12 fugues in Ludus tonalis. It's on page 188 of this PDF. So if you look for page 188 and just print out those two pages, it's fugue number 6 in E flat. Print this out and be ready with a pencil, and then I'll show you with a 20-minute tutorial on what to do to understand fugues and how to mark them up and what to look for and what to focus on. I guarantee that this will be a turning point in your learning of fugues. Now you might already be familiar with many of these fugue analysis videos on YouTube, in which they have a lot of color coding. They'll have like red and green and yellow, and they'll have all these color-coded strips indicating certain melodies and themes and that sort of thing, and it shows how the fugue is broken up. I'm not a huge fan of that type of analysis because that's more of a sort of a micro analysis. That's sort of what I would consider to be like over analysis. You don't want to over-analyze. So this method of analysis that I'm going to show you here is something it's definitely not over-analysis, but it's something that is I think the clearest form of analysis, and the one that will help you the most in learning fugues, whether they be by Bach or Hindemith or whoever. I guarantee that this system of mine will have you learning and understanding and finally playing fugues, more of them than you ever thought possible. So if you stay tuned to my channel and subscribe, I will from time to time have videos coming out like this, similar fugue analysis videos on Bach fugues as well from the Well-Tempered Clavier, as well as more of the Hindemith fugues from Ludus tonalis. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn our attention towards fugue number 6 from Ludus tonalis, and I will use this as an example on how to analyze fugues, the essential steps to learning fugues. you can go down below this video and print out the PDF. It's a free PDF from IMSLP, and it should be on page 188. It is the Fuga Sexta in E flat. That is the sixth fugue, or fugue number 6 in B flat. Now, I chose this fugue because it is relatively short. It's probably the shortest fugue in the Ludus tonalis. It is not terribly difficult to play. Actually, I would rank it probably easier than most Bach fugues. It sounds a little strange to our ears if we're not used to it, because Hindemith's system was different than the traditional system of major and minor tonalities. But I think that you'll begin to really enjoy this fugue if you just study it a little bit and break it down and begin to understand how it's put together. So what I do when I learn a fugue is I do not just sit down and try to play from beginning to end. Well, actually, I take that back. I might just do that one time just to test my sight reading skills. But then after that, after just a sort of a cursory read through with mistakes and everything like that, then I'll just simply go through and get really serious about analyzing the whole macro design or the architectural components. So first and foremost, the very first and number one step that you should do in learning any fugue, whether it's by Bach or Hindemith or Beethoven, is list all the subject entries. And I happen to prefer capital letters with a circle here. So this subject, the fugue subject here, is like usually is just a solo line. And this particular subject is right there. So that's the introduction of the subject by the alto. So I like to put a capital A and make it very clear that that's the alto line that's stating that opening subject. Then you can see the soprano, capital S for soprano, takes the melody here, takes the subject and states it up to this point here. And then after this just brief sort of transitional measure, then the bass comes in. You can see this, the subject is stated here in the bass up until this point here. So at this point here, at the end, after all of the voices have stated the subject, they've all taken turns stating the subject. There's only 3 voices in this fugue. There's 3, not 4. So technically, after the statement of each voice, after each voice or each part has taken its turn, that is officially the end of the first exposition. So I like to put exposition 1, I just abbreviate here and I put that in a big box. So that tells me that exposition 1 formally ends here, but then you have a little bridge or a transitional section here of 4 measures. Sometimes bridges are also called episodes. I think episodes are usually longer than bridges, but often bridge and episode are used interchangeably. And then after this 4-measure bridge or episode, we have an extra entry of the subject here in the soprano. So you need to put a capital S here, circle that. And I list extra entry because usually, well, oftentimes, after the first exposition and a bridge, it will go right to the next exposition. So that's why this is an extra entry of the subject in the soprano voice. But then you can see here after that entry here, beginning in measure 21, we have the bass states the subject here. But notice something. Notice that it goes in different directions. So I'll play it as written here. Actually, I think I got that A flat wrong there. Anyway, notice that that is an inversion of the original form of instead of that we have so you see instead of going down it goes up, instead of going up this goes down. So whenever a composer takes an original melody and flips all the intervals upside down, or you basically go the other way, up instead of down and down instead of up, that's called inversion. And usually for fugues, composers such as Bach and Hindemith here will have the complete exposition have statements in inversion, so not just one time. So the bass states the subject in inversion here, then the soprano takes its turn here, and then right after that the alto takes its turn here. Or it sort of just goes in, this may be a soprano entry here actually, but I just listed A because it's a little lower sounding. But anyways, regardless, you have 1, 2, 3. You have 3 statements of the subject. So that makes another exposition, the second exposition. This is the inversion exposition. Then after that, you have a bridge. So you have 4 measures bridge. So these 4 measures parallel these 4 measures here. See, it's very similar in its construction, with the use of the 8th notes and so forth. And notice that bridges or episodes like this are transitional measures that do not consist of anything with the original subject in it. Then finally we get to exposition 3. So after this bridge here, we have a bass entry here, so you need to put a capital B here. So the bass goes back to its original form. So I put original here to indicate that it's no longer an inversion, like in these examples here. So we have original, we have then the soprano states its subject here, and then the alto or the soprano kind of runs in, the soprano and alto kind of run into each other here. But we have another statement of the subject here on the top. And all the time that you have two parts in one clef, or in one clef, or if you have one part in one clef, you always have 2 accompanying parts in the other clef. Those are often known as counter subjects. So like what you would, if you have, this is the subject here, and then this is the subject here above in the soprano with the stems going up. This alto line here, that's known as the counter subject. I should have actually said that earlier, but that is one of the words used a lot in fugue analysis. So anyway, we have exposition 3 here with 3 statements of the subject, bass, soprano, alto, and then after that, I like to put these little asterisks or stars here marking a kind of a turn of events. So then from here to the end, he just wraps it all up with a little codetta, a little ending section. And then you can see that sort of ingeniously he puts here at the end, he has. So So he has like an inversion of the first motif of the first subject here at the end. So I really like the way he uses that at the end here. It's sort of unexpected. So even before learning any of the notes or the fingerings, or even before sitting down and even trying to play any of it on the piano, the most essential step or steps in learning a fugue is to identify all subject entries with their particular permutation listed here. An inversion is one of the permutations. Another kind of permutation is retrograde. That's when you take, say, a melody, instead of going here from here, composers will do it backwards. That's not done very often, but Hindemith does have a fugue in which he uses retrograde, so we might get to that in a later video. So you want to list all of the subjects, all of the occurrences of the subjects along with their permutations, if they have any permutations, all the bridges or episodes or the measures that are linking together the expositions. Most fugues tend to have 3 or maybe 4 expositions, give or take maybe an exposition. So that's the most important thing to do. So you do not want to just sit down and start playing and just play from beginning to end. You want to map out the whole architecture of it. Then you can attack it any way you want. You might want to even do this. Try the easiest parts first. See this bridge here? It looks pretty easy. So you could just sort of touch your toes a little bit into the water by just practicing this bridge here, those 4 measures. Then you could learn, say, this bridge, these 4 measures. So you'd have those out of the way. Then you could probably do that all in one day, or maybe in a couple hours time or less if you're a fast learner. Then you could go and you could learn the first exposition. I would suggest most of the time when I learn fugues, I focus on learning the first exposition before anything else. I just mentioned learning the bridges because they look kind of easy. Sometimes it's nice to learn the easy parts first. But if you don't do that, if you don't learn the easy parts first, I would definitely recommend learning the first exposition. That's the most important thing in all fugues because it sets the whole foundation of the fugue. So you want to maybe just spend some time working on this melody here, and then after that spend a little time from here to here, then spend a little time from here to here. You could probably do that maybe in, say, one practice session, and then maybe, say, the next day you can learn it from here to here, the end of the first exposition. Then say the next day you could put everything together and be able to play the first exposition. And then if you can do that, what you want to do is every day you want to just go through the first exposition so it's really rock solid. And then say you learn these bridges already, so that's almost half the fugue already. So then maybe you can take a couple more days and work just on exposition 2. You could spend like a day just learning from here to here, where the bass states the subject in an inversion and you have the counter subject material here. And then the next day you could work on the soprano subject here. And then the next day you could do this, and then you could put them all together. And however fast you work, you can sort of gauge it by how fast you work. So everybody is different. Everybody learns at different speeds. But regardless of how fast or how slow you learn, this is the most effective way of learning fugues, whether they're by Bach or by Hindemith. So also some other things to look out for when you are learning fugues, and that is use fingering as key starting points. So some of these key starting points, like you might want to put key fingers on points such as here when the right hand comes in with the left, or right here. You might want to just write in the fingering for this chord right here, because those are key starting points. So I would list maybe important fingering on either difficult passages or starting points. So so you can be very clear what fingers you start with on each of these starting points, because you really want to be able to start from each one of these points. So each one of these, you don't want to be able to just start from the beginning all the time. You need to be able to start anywhere. So I would write in fingerings, if you have to, on the starting points, and use those to help you practice. And then when you're practicing, don't try to go from beginning to end, but just work on just the components, like say just the codetta, just be able to play from here to here really well. And then, be able to play from exposition 3, from here to here really well. Then you can put them together. Then you can go from here to here really well. So it's only going to be your complete performance and complete understanding of the fugue will only be as good as your understanding of each of the individual components here. So it's important, very important, that you mark off the overall architecture or the macro design of fugues, as I've probably said now 10 times, but I'll say it again. Another thing to look out for with fugues is tempo. And Bach fugues, you don't really need to worry about this much, because Bach did not have a metronome, and there are no metronome marks on Bach's music that are authentic. But this is from Hindemith, actually, 100 per eighth note. I think I don't know, I think that might be a little fast, but one bit of advice is do not take metronome speeds really religiously. Composers are often not very good with their use of metronomes and with indicating speeds in music. So I would not put too much stock in a set of numbers here that either the composer or the editor puts here. That's not cast in stone. I would not make a big deal about that. Only play as fast as you can play. And if you're trying to determine a finished performance tempo for the fugue, you need to just experiment with slower and faster speeds and see what you think sounds appropriate, because you are different from everyone else, and it would be wrong for you to just accept 100 per eighth note as religious dogma without questioning it. So do not automatically take metronome marks. I would question every metronome mark you see listed. You need to question those, because they're not always right, and they are often wrong and often misleading. Because I found many of the metronome marks, almost all the metronome marks in Ludus tonalis, I think are too fast. Then, finally, after you put everything together, you learn all the components, you have it all listed, you understand the architecture, you understand the macro design, then you can easily play from beginning to end. It's a piece of cake. It's really easy. Now, imagine if you did none of that, and all you did was sit there and just try to play every day from beginning to end, and you didn't understand what was going on, and it sounded like a bunch of cacophony. Well, that would not be a very enjoyable experience, But when you have it all broken up here intellectually and all broken down, and you can understand how everything fits together, it makes it so much easier. So much easier. So thank you for joining me today, and stay tuned for more videos like this in the future.